And away we go with a sober Kubiko. Welcome to the Get Salty Experience podcast. It's the only podcast that brings the firehouse kitchen table to you. As always, brought to you with my lifelong partner and buddy and pal, Lieutenant Ruffy Rafrano.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Also, Proby, a.k.a. Producer Pete.
Hello.
Shalom.
And Pete, tonight we're brought to you by what, my friend, as always?
Well, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we are brought to you by Getting Salty Apparel. And if you guys don't know who we are yet, we are a Firefighter apparel and accessories brand. And you can find wonderful hats, shirts, mugs, glasses, shot glasses. What else do we have? We have the lighter. Is that in yet, our new lighter?
On the way.
It's on the way.
Lighters, cigar cutters, all that wonderful stuff. So if you want to support us and you want to support the show, head on over to www.gettingsaltyapparel.com.
Ah, look at that. You're retired.
And Ruffy's wearing his retired shirt there. Nice.
Yes,
Very
okay.
nice.
Before we get to the very cool show, the Back in the Day show, we're going to discuss a really cool Pier fire. First, I'd like to talk about the train fire wreck of last week and just touch upon it quickly. I'm going to be totally honest. I was way out of control with the drinking. And sometimes, honestly, you guys discuss this with Pete, sometimes your subconscious takes you places where you don't want to go. And maybe I was blunting a little bit of what I was about to deal with Ronnie and the kids and Carol. So maybe I definitely was over the limit. And I'm going to give you my old school tip of the day early tonight, all right? Here it is. Always listen to your parents, no matter how old you are, because my mother has been telling me that I'm drinking too much on the show, and you might say something that you regret. I'm just saying. So here's to Ellie Kubler, who tells me this is Coca-Cola. Tonight was Diet Coke. Ellie Kubler, you were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll never doubt you again. So the other thing I wanted to touch upon is when I was drinking, not to say I'm never going to drink again because I like to have fun. Right now, I can't even look at a bottle of Tito's without wanting to vomit. But the other thing, maybe the ball breaking is great, but sometimes maybe I take it a little too far with the cursing and whatnot. And I wanted to bring out a point to say that maybe we don't always have to use the F-bomb. And Pete, pull up the picture of that guy I sent you.
Okay, stand by. Stand by. Here it comes. Look at that man.
There he is. That guy might have been the king ball breaker of all times. The one and only. Although he did bring it home to my kitchen table where he had 6 kids who were basically breaking each other's balls like it was the firehouse kitchen table. He never, ever in my lifetime did I hear that man utter the F-bomb. So you can be a supreme ball breaker at the kitchen table without going over that line of using the F word every other sentence. And that's all I got to say about that.
Well, I got a few words myself, actually.
Oh, go ahead, Ruffy.
I'm going to make it short and sweet. We're hard on ourselves. We fool around a lot and we break balls and we do the whole thing, but we really are hard on ourselves and we want to get the best show that we can. So we try new stuff, And what I was telling Pete was, when we started this thing, we don't have any idea what the hell we're doing. And Pete, helps us get through some of this stuff, and he comes up with ideas, and then we all kind of ham and egg it to come up with the best show that we think. And we're learning as we go. There's no doubt about it. So when you look at the first show to compare to the shows recently, it's night and day. So we're always going to try something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in the end, we're always going to be open and honest, and we're going to try the best we can, and that's it.
Well, I just want to touch on one quick thing, and we'll add on very quickly. I've been in television for 26 years now, and it's an evolution. Sometimes you see a show evolve or devolve right in front of you, right in front of your eyes, right? And we're gonna try stuff, but it's live, baby, and anything can happen at any given time. So, That being said, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna keep pushing the envelope to bring you guys the absolute best content out there. I'm super excited about what we got coming up, especially with the roadshow. So everybody get on over and send us your emails to gettingsaltyexperience@gmail.com to get your roadshow submissions in, because we do want to hit the road and come see you. I'm besides myself excited to continue to pump out new content for you guys. That's it. Boom.
And once I can actually smell liquor again without getting nauseous, I will be drinking, because I swear, I think I might have had a mild stroke that night. I don't know. I very well could have.
When you didn't sign off with the stay low and go, that's when I knew we were in. I didn't know we were in that much trouble.
I didn't know what planet I was on. I didn't. I'm looking across the table like, oh.
Look, the funniest part was when I carried you into your house later on at night. That was the best. And then your wife texted me like, "What did you do to my husband?"
All right, so let's bring our guest back, because we have a guy who was one step removed from this fire, we like to say, right? We're bringing him back, Garrett Lindgren. Garrett Lindgren.
Good evening, brothers.
We are going to talk about the Pier fire, which was named, I had it somewhere. What is it? The Luckenbach Steamship Company, right? That was the ones who owned the pier, and they owned the pier next to it, the warehouse next to it. We're going to talk about that fire that occurred on December 3rd, 1956. It was a Monday morning, 22 days from Christmas, in the borough of Brooklyn. And it was the largest pier in the New York City harbor at that time. And I believe it was, 1,700? Was it 1,700 feet long?
1,700 change, yeah. 1,740.
1,740 feet long and a couple of hundred feet wide, I believe.
175 foot wide.
There you go. So that's a pretty big pier. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome Garrett Lindgren.
Gary! Thanks for having me back, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on, man.
Well, listen,
when we first, we're always looking for back in the days. And after we had the podcast with you, you had mentioned this fire. And again, we're on this job all this time, and we don't know about any of this stuff. So I talked to Garrett after, and, he said he had some information about it. So he forwarded me the information, and me and Kev talked, and we were like, you know what, let's do this fire, the Pier fire, and we'll get Garrett back on. It's always good to have, he has some stories from his old man, although he was young at the time, but he still remembers some of the stuff. And then we're going to go through some pictures. And I think, Garrett, you actually sent us a little video, right? Like a minute or two movie or something like that. So
I did, yes.
Yeah. Right. I think that might have been actually filmed by Chief Steve.
That was when he was a young Chief Steve. Here we go. You want me to roll it?
Roll it, Petey.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, boys. Here we go.
New York fireboats rush to battle with a huge blaze on the Brooklyn waterfront, pouring thousands of tons of water a minute into the inferno, while tugs brave the flames to haul merchant ships to safety. The initial fire exploded 4,000 tons of inflammable cargo on the city's largest pier, shattering windows as far as 5 miles away. 12 people are known to be dead, and at least 240 injured, while the cost will take weeks to determine. But it is estimated at many millions of dollars. The fire burns late into the night, with some 300 firemen struggling to get it under control. Warehouses and restaurants in the neighborhood look as though a bomb has hit them. It's a miracle that hundreds of people were not killed in this chaos of smashed buildings and broken glass. The result of New York's worst waterfront blaze for 20 years.
Wow.
There it is.
I love those old narrators, man. That's so funny.
It was a
Smoke Lucky Strikes.
Plenty of typos to put in on the ships. If you close your eyes, that could have been like the movie trailer for the Blob. The Blob is coming.
Oh, the creature, right? What was the one? The thing. Back in the day, the thing.
Oh my goodness.
So that did look like some major fuego there, and although I think he said there were 14 people, actually 10 people died, which was amazing that no firemen actually died. Right. So Garrett, give us a little a little time frame of how it unfolded, because your dad was actually working that day.
He was, yeah, Dad was working that day. He was, at the time, he was a lieutenant assigned to 101 truck in Red Hook. The way the department operated back then was if the ladder company was scheduled to go out on building inspection, they would trade crews with the engine in their house. So although he was assigned to 101 truck that day, they went out on BI. So they took their crew and they went out on engine 202, which was their the other company in their house. So they responded to this incident first due on the second alarm. The area there, they call that Industry City. The northern part of that complex is Industry City, and I think the southern end is called Bush Terminal. And the box came in. It was December 3rd, 1956. The Brooklyn Central office got a phone alarm for a fire on the pier at the foot of 35th Street and transmitted box 1499. You guys gave the size up already. It was 175 by 1740.
And that was 3:15 in the afternoon, right?
Yes.
Garrett? Yeah, about 3:15
Correct.
in the afternoon.
Yeah. Concrete deck pier.
Right.
And it had a one-story steel shed on it. Earlier, prior to this happening, burlap bags holding foam rubber scrap, had broken while they were being transported on the pier. And a lot of that scrap was getting scattered across the deck of the pier. From the best that they could figure, sparks from a dock worker's oxyacetylene torch ignited some of the loose foam scrap, and it was very flammable. So all of that scrap that was loose started to burn. And the story goes that which is, as we all know, is pretty common, that we run into one time or another. Employees on the pier tried to fight the fire themselves, and of course, clearly were unsuccessful in controlling it. And that's when the call, I guess, went into the fire department to respond. Prior to the arrival of fire department units, the fire had spread to 26,365 pounds of ground foam rubber scrap on the north side of the pier, 750 feet from the land end.
I didn't know that.
That's going to give off a nice black smoke, huh? That kind of rubber.
Oh, God, yeah.
Got to give it
good
thick,
stuff to breathe.
How about like this?
Look at that.
Like a thick, soupy.
1018 for 1022.
Yeah.
What I was reading was about the entire thing was that two photographers were rushing there on their way down to document it, right? And when it exploded, it rocked their car as they were driving. So they got out of the vehicle to try to take a photo of it. And they said it looked like a nuclear explosion, like a mushroom cloud over the city. Yeah. And they just couldn't get the pictures off fast enough, but they wound up getting this one here at some point, which is out of control.
Yeah. I read that as well.
That's a great shot.
Look at all the fireboats. I don't even think we have that many fireboats anymore, right? I mean, what do we have? A couple, 3.
Oh,
yeah. Back then they had a lot.
They had a lot, right?
They had always like 8 or 9, maybe.
Right.
I think we still do. We have a Marine 9, right? Right now, we have 1 through 9.
We don't have all those numbers all the way up to it, though.
I see.
They disbanded a lot of them.
I wonder if they had then that many back in the day because of what happened during World War II. You know, because they used the fireboats in London a lot. You know, after the Blitzkrieg and stuff. I wonder if they were actually worried about any kind of bombings during the
city,
war.
You know, at one point in time too, the city was I don't know if it was the major port in the country, but it was really a major port, and you know, like Manhattan had a ton of piers. They
to actually do
all burned
to do
pretty
port,
much
to do port work. But now, you know, they make parks on them now and stuff like that. You know, it's not for commerce. You know, back then you know it was a lot of stuff coming and going. So
all boats now, I think, do a lot more water rescue type of stuff than they did back then.
Yeah.
And they're faster moving boats, but they still have pretty significant pumping capability to handle, you know, whatever potential is out there.
Well, that marine company got there pretty quick, so they must have been either in the Navy Yard, maybe, right? Would you say, or something? Because they got on the scene pretty quick.
It says that they were south of this incident, and it did used to be one or two fireboats that were on the west side in Brooklyn. Marine 8 at the time of this fire, I think this fireboat was engine 223, but later on they numbered them the way we know them now, Marine 8 or whatever. Marine 8 used to be, I don't know, maybe like in the 50s streets on the west side of Brooklyn. So it might have been the boat that eventually became Marine 8, possibly. But yeah, I think they were pretty close by. It sounds like they were, because they arrived early on, before the explosion.
So how long did they fight the fire before the blast? I know it was the explosion happened when around the fourth alarm, you said, I think.
They transmitted the fifth.
The fourth and fifth had been transmitted, but the companies weren't there. This says that 4 minutes after the box was transmitted, 228 engine arrived on the scene. They were commanded by Acting Lieutenant Al Kramer, who transmitted the second alarm on arrival. And it notes that that's one of the few times, up to that point in time, it was one of the few times that an acting officer had ever transmitted the second alarm on arrival. So you got to put yourselves in his
Brian,
shoes.
you would never pull
this poor guy. hey, kid, you got the front seat today. The lieutenant's sick.
You would have to be full, fire all around you to transmit a second.
Oh my God! Yeah, I can't even imagine. Poor guy.
And it says the third, fourth, and fifth alarms were sent in at intervals at approximately 7 minutes.
Really fast.
Really quick.
Really fast.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen too often,
Yeah.
Unless things are really
that amount of rubber, that shit must have been burning fast and hard, man. And then, and then once the explosion happened. But go ahead, Garrett, get up to the explosion part where.
Well, as you just said, how quickly those alarms were transmitted right up to a fifth. 26 minutes later, it says, which was shortly after the transmission of the fifth alarm, but before the fourth and fifth alarm units arrived on the scene, and notes that there was, at that point, there was tremendous traffic delays in the area because of what was going on. I guess everybody and their brother was trying to get there to buff it or something, but companies were very delayed because of the traffic. The fire reached 37,000 pounds of Cordo detonant fuse,
really
setting
bad
off.
Shit.
Yeah.
I don't do explosives other than like M80s, so I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad.
I got a couple 2,000-3,000 pounds of it in my backyard.
Yeah.
I'm glad I live really like 1,200 miles from you.
I'm kidding. Jokes.
It's also referred to as a primacord. So
yes.
Yeah. Like det cord, yeah, for like detonating stuff.
Yeah.
It set off. It says it set off possibly the largest explosion to ever occur in New York City's history.
Wow. Yeah.
Which
36 miles, right? You said it was heard. Up to 36 miles away, the explosion was heard.
Hey, Kev, here, tell them about this. This is incredible.
Yeah, if you zoom that in, Pete, you can see where the arrow is where the pier is, and it looks like 1,000-foot radius was major destruction, and all the way out until what's the radius beyond that, Pete?
It's 1 mile was broken glass damage.
Glass, and in a 1 mile radius, all the windows were broken in a 1 mile radius from there.
It's kind of like that explosion that happened like in Lebanon over there, right? I mean, it's probably something similar.
Oh,
yeah. That's a good point, Ruffy. Yeah.
I mean, because that whole pier there, all those piers, where the outline is where it says major destruction, right? What is that, 1,000-foot radius there? Yeah.
1,000.
I mean, that's got to be, everything had to be.
That's 10 football fields, right? 100.
Got to be down to dust.
300, 369. It's 3 football fields. A little more.
It's got to be down to dust, right? I mean, all that stuff had to be down to nothing.
So, which is surprising, which what we were talking about in the pre-show was how not one single fireman was killed, and they were in that explosive zone right there. Right, they were probably within the 1,000-foot radius. How many guys would you think were in the 1,000-foot? 3 alarms.
3 alarms. Say, I would guess back then that's got to be at least like 75 guys on the scene already. Figure the engines back then didn't ride as full, I don't think, as later on, but they had to have like 4 guys and an officer for the most part on an engine, and probably 5 and 1 on the truck. And the rescue was there.
Right,
Yeah,
rescue
you know,
was there.
probably
Yep, sure that.
60, 70 something guys, maybe.
Yep.
And for no one, as you just pointed out, for no one, not one of them to be killed is, you know, how do you figure that out?
Saint
I mean,
Florian. That's it, Saint Florian, bro. It was
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
definitely a
10
power
people-
beyond what we have.
the 10 people that we killed, 2 of them were decapitated. One of them was a kid who just left school because it happened at 3:15 in the afternoon, and he was
Yeah.
how far away did they say he was? Up to, what were they saying? Up to 1,000 feet from the
I
scene.
was gonna say, it was a few blocks away.
One victim was killed 1,000 feet away from the scene. That's crazy.
Terrible.
Yeah, most of it was
Really
just projectiles of steel or whatever it was.
A lot of steel.
Yeah. But Garrett, you had a good theory there, right? That they were so close that the stuff blew up as opposed
That
to
was
straight.
yeah. That's pretty much what the theory was in the WMYF article that I read. Was that the force of the blast knocked a lot of the guys over. You know, if you think about it, probably most of these guys were World War II vets, so they were kind of used to things blowing up and whatever. It said that a lot of guys that weren't initially knocked over dove and hit the deck, and the theory being that everything was above them and went laterally out way further than where they were. So they were in the concussion, but the shrapnel, apparently for the most part, didn't get them. There were near misses that I read about, you know, some chiefs and that had just arrived on the scene. They said like big, large pieces of cast iron pipe and stuff hit one of the chief's cars and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just didn't get any of the guys.
Yeah, I think one 200-pound piece of pipe landed right next to a chief, if I'm not mistaken, and then you know, it was just like, you know, imagine having a human-sized piece of pipe land right next to you, 200 pounds, and then
Yeah,
you know, nothing happens. Good Lord, that's frightening as hell.
they right after the explosion, they transmitted 2 separate borough calls, which brought I think a couple of alarms more of units from Manhattan to the scene. The story of the initial fireboat that responded, they were using the Firefighter, which at the time was engine 223. It says they responded from their berth, which was south of the pier. When they arrived, they went for the only opening in the structure that they saw fire coming out of. Now, this is going back a little. This is prior to the explosion. But they found one open cargo door on the pier with heavy fire coming out of it. So they tied off there and started to operate all of their deck guns into the fire. Shortly after that, the chief of the 25th Battalion, which back then the 25th Battalion was the Marine Battalion. The chief of the 25th Battalion ran out onto the pier and told them that the fire was starting to extend toward the land side of the pier. He wanted them to reposition closer to the land side of the pier and try to cut the fire off. So they let go their lines and repositioned the boat. And as they were tying it off in a new position, the explosion occurred, and the explosion occurred exactly where they had been tied off.
Holy mackerel. Oh, I think I just saw that as well. I saw
Yeah.
that. Yes, the phone line.
So
Yeah.
had that, I mean, that's fate again. Had that chief not told them to move,
Oh my God, right?
reposition, they would have been exactly at the ground zero of the blast. And, you know,
Yeah.
as it was, the boat was damaged. It blew out all the glass in the pilot house, and everybody on the boat was thrown around. Guys were thrown off of upper parts of the boat. One guy was hanging from the top of the boat, and the captain and
Some guys
I think
went
the
in the water.
pilot got him.
Some guys
The
went.
guy
in the
went
water.
in the water. I think the chief might have gotten blown in the water as well, the Marine Battalion chief, because he was actually on the pier. But guys on the boat were banged around pretty bad. I think the guys on the pilot house were caught up. But, you know, to their credit, as we do on that job, you know, when things go bad, if you physically can get back up and start working, and they did, they actually rescued those guys that were banged up on the boat, actually rescued a couple of land firefighters who were thrown into the water. which getting thrown into the water from an explosion is bad enough, but you're wearing turnout gear. If those old boots started filling up, you're in trouble really quick.
You have to do something fast. Exactly right.
So yeah, the boat guys acted very heroically there. Like I say, they were injured themselves, and they immediately went back to work, started operating high caliber streams into the fire and rescuing firefighters. So, you can only imagine what that was like. We were talking
the same thing. Like there had to be some type of shell shock, right? I mean, there would have to be.
You would think
some type of like time frame where after the explosion, you would be like, not able to do anything.
You would think, but at the same time, I guess, I don't know. I guess when you look and you see other firefighters in trouble, maybe just it's like just kick into gear and do it. Right. I don't know. I mean, that's like crazy stuff. I mean, I can't even imagine the feeling of the concussion from that thing.
Right there,
it's amazing it didn't kill guys just displacing their internal organs.
Right, something that big, right?
Yeah.
To your point, it says here that Chief of Department Edward Connors was responding to the fire on 35th Street and was half a block away when the blast actually lifted the car off the ground. So that's how insane. And those were not light. That wasn't a Hyundai. What I mean?
Yeah, steel cars, the real thing.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
This actually says here too, right? Not too far. Deputy Commissioner Harry Moore and his aide were getting their fire clothes out of the trunk of his car when the blast came. So I don't know how close he was, but I'm assuming he was pretty close. He said the commissioner grabbed a young boy who was passing by and pulled him into the shelter of the trunk until the debris stopped falling. So the concussion was one thing, right? The blast was one thing. But now think about how long it would take for that stuff to. It was probably raining debris for a minute, maybe longer than that. Who the hell knows? I mean, it probably, it wasn't like you blew and then that was it. It was crap falling all over the place.
I mean, how high did this stuff go?
Right,
before it started falling back to earth,
Right.
Tough to comprehend some of this stuff. Really is.
Go ahead, Garrett. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, buddy.
No, they were saying that there were a lot after the blast. There were a lot of fires that were started just from the debris, falling down that was on fire. So again, that was kind of like we talked about the St. George fire. That was kind of like that. Once you start getting, and then that keeps mushrooming out, right? It keeps, taking on other stuff. You start to, lose, manpower as well in an area. You probably this was a borough call or no?
It was they did 2 borough calls.
Oh, is that right?
To get units. Yeah, 2 different boxes in Manhattan they transmitted to get companies over the 5th alarm. It's also mentioned that a firefighter from that fireboat firefighter, I don't know if this is how they used to do things back then or if maybe the door was broken on their firehouse or what, but one guy from the boat was left back, it says, on house watch. And he was looking out the window waiting for the second boat that was responding, looking for it to pass by the firehouse when the explosion happened. And it blew out all the windows in the firehouse. It broke the steam pipes, the water pipes, everything in the firehouse was destroyed. He was cut, and he ran outside initially because he thought the firehouse was going to collapse. The concussion was that bad. So that kind of answers, I think Kevin had asked when we first started tonight about the location of that boat. I guess the firehouse must have been very close by for that much damage to their firehouse. And it says that he was subsequently, he ran back into the firehouse to get a towel because he realized he was cut bad. He was bleeding from his face. He had glass impaled in his face and stuff. And he was picked up by a police launch, which I guess transported him someplace to get him some aid. But that, again, evidence of how bad this thing was. He wasn't even on the scene. He gets hurt in the firehouse. You don't expect to get badly hurt in the firehouse while the rest of the guys are out of the job,
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
They were saying that some pieces were as far as 1,000 feet away. It started fires in other structures, like you were talking about, right, Rufi? Like the shit. And in fact, that Yeah, they heard the blast in Mineola, New York, which is 26 miles away.
Yeah.
In Mineola, New York, they felt the blast.
Crazy.
But guys, in
Crazy.
the blast zone is still alive. It's amazing,
Yeah, it's
really.
incredible.
Yeah.
Man. Your old
Yeah.
man was right there. I mean, we're going to talk about him. Pete, what were you going to say?
It just one of the other things was responding to the job. All these different engines and everybody on the boats and everything was amazing. But I think my favorite pick, besides the one we're going to show of R2, everybody in the chat, they're all asking about Rescue 2, is this one right here, where this how New York is this? The firefighters are responding via subway. And Garrett, you were telling us about that back in the pre-show. Why was that they were responding this way?
They back in the day, if there was a major incident, building collapse or something along the lines of this, a major fire, borough call type of thing, and they needed more manpower, but they didn't need more equipment. They would leave companies in service, and they would. There was a telegraph signal for it. I didn't think to look it up, but there was actually a telegraph signal that would go out over the bells, and it would tell them to send X amount of firemen from particular divisions to the scene. And that's what's going on in this picture here. They actually had requested firefighters only without apparatus. And that's how guys got around to a great extent back then, was by subway. So you put on your turnout coat and your helmet and you go hop a ride on the subway and you respond that way.
You think
So,
they got
kind of cool. That
portholes,
picture's
Dave?
great. I never saw a picture like that before.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm going to use that tomorrow for the Instagram. I think I like it.
Yeah,
That's
Life
great.
magazine.
They got porthole to porthole with that one overtime.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think they got anything back then, money wise. They said, I know there was no overtime. If you got stuck at a late run and it was a job, you were there until it was over, I think. Yeah.
And for the hardcore buffs in the chat here who are asking, yes, Rescue 2 was a specialized unit that was on the scene. And what it says here is that a 6-man unit from Brooklyn was equipped with explosive meter, Geiger counter, electric saw, inhalator, and filter mask. Fireman Robert Christie here on the left jumped into the water after the explosion to rescue a stunned fire lieutenant from a neighboring station house.
Yeah, so that's what we were saying. Like, guys could be, knocked off their feet, still have, shell shock or whatever. And, but, getting back to what we were talking about with a lot of, I would say probably the majority of the job back then lived in the city, right? I mean, there weren't too many people who lived in the suburbs. Now it's probably the opposite. I mean, a lot of guys may be moving back to the city now, but I think I
have a couple of really old journals from the job. And actually somebody got me the journal of, from 156 truck from the first day my father reported to work as a probie. And if you look in the journal, in the back, I think it always was, they would have, well, you'd know, Louis, you wrote roll calls and stuff, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's got the list of addresses and phone numbers. And, everybody, by the time we were all around, most of the guys didn't live in the city.
Right.
But back then, everybody on that roster was pretty much even in the neighborhood a lot of times, close to the firehouse, It was just completely different, Probably was good for morale, though, for keeping the guys close. And if there was anything going on that you were doing, guys are nearby, they're coming. They're not saying, "Oh man, another 2-hour ride before I get there to do this," and
Yeah.
Well, Kev's
Mrs. a mutual.
Yeah, right. They call him up.
Go knock on the door. Hey, get out your rig.
Go pick him up with the rig. Well, Kev's old man, he finished up his career in 291s, which was, just a few blocks away from
still at my house. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
He always used to show up with the rig.
That's a great picture on the back step, right?
Yeah.
Rubber coat. And he, we always used to, as kids, we used to walk there, and they had matrons back then in the firehouse. I remember, they had a couple of women in there who were making the beds and doing some stuff there. I guess that ended, pretty much. Did you ever see a matron in the firehouse, Garrett?
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I first started riding the 234, they still had a matron. But the guys, they didn't want to come into the firehouse. I mean, she was elderly, but she was old school, and every now and then she would show up and go upstairs and start making the beds and stuff. And the guys always told them, "No, we'll bring the money to you. And anybody that's out there that doesn't know about the matrons were the widows of firefighters, and way back in history, firefighter passed away, there wasn't a whole lot of money coming in for the family. So firehouses would hire the firefighter's widow to come and theoretically to come and do some committee work at the firehouse, make the beds or something like that. But as they got older, the guys would just send the money to them and tell them, don't come to the firehouse. Excuse me, but a lot of them just were old school, and they would still show up,
Yeah.
See, Evan King remembers
291 and 140 had the last matron on the job.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's funny that we were kids and we used to see her.
I can't remember her name
Yeah.
for the life of me. I don't know if Evan remembers her name, but he was there. I don't remember. Yeah, but
Wow,
she was
crazy.
there. And then what they did too, they gave her money all up until she passed away. So it was
Sure.
like
The old thing they taught us in probie school when you first come on a job, they used to tell us every day in probie school, whatever you do, you make sure you do the right thing. And that was part of doing the right thing, was taking care of somebody's widow, after they were gone prematurely, you still made sure that they had some money coming in.
Yeah.
So that was part of doing the right thing,
Yeah.
It was a good thing, good part of the history.
So Garrett, just let's get back to let's talk about your old man, like what you remember, what he told you, and what you've read about after the blast or during the blast or right before the blast. What he was doing and what he saw.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, and I hear this from a lot of guys who were in my age group, and their fathers were in World War II and that kind of thing. They were pretty close-lipped about anything that was like out of the ordinary. Like I know I used to ask my father periodically when I was a teenager. I used to ask him about World War II, and he told me very little. He used to always tell me, "Oh, someday I'll sit down and I'll tell you about it." But I think a lot of the traumatic things that went on back then, because you can only imagine. I can't imagine what a war is like. I never went to war, but I can imagine it's got to be pretty damn terrible, And so he never really told me very much about it. Like I asked him, I said, well, I mean, were you in positions where you had to fire your weapon? Or there's, oh yeah, a couple times. I don't know if we ever hit anybody, And then I start looking after he died. I start looking into what he did, and he was in the Third Army with Patton. So he fired his gun a couple of times.
couple of times.
Give me a break. So I think that carried over into the job, because I really started learning more about what he did when I started riding with him, because I would see what they did, but he did talk about this fire a little bit, and pretty much what he told me was what was in WMYF, because after this incident, WMYF went out to the firehouses that were involved and tracked down guys that were working and asked them what happened to them, and pretty much they arrived on the scene. I believe they were first on the second alarm. They arrived on the scene. He told the guys to stay with the rig. They didn't have handy-talkies back then to communicate. So the policy back then was you arrive on the scene, you report into the command post, the chief that's running the fire, ask him what he needs, and then you go back and tell the brothers, and you go to work. So he had gone up to whoever was running at the time. I don't know if it was the 4-0 battalion or if it was already the deputy. And he said, have the guys stretch a line from your rig. And they were up by Marginal Street, I believe. They had a hydrant. And he turned around to head back to the rig to tell the guys to stretch the line, and the thing blew up. And it's Pete, you got that right? You got that right up?
Hold on a sec there. You want me to read that?
You can read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it says Lieutenant Robert E. Lindgren of Ladder Company 101, detailed to Engine 202, was running back to his company, that is 202, with Donald Holton with orders to stretch in when the blast caught them 25 feet up from Marginal Street. Both were thrown to the ground. He lost his boots, helmet, and wristwatch. He got up and continued running through the debris, raining down to the pumper further up on 35th Street. Since he couldn't fit under the new cars parked about, the pumper was his best bet. He found that several firemen and 5 civilians had the same idea. Art Levitt, 202's MPO, was looking toward the pier for a signal from Lieutenant Lindgren as the ball of fire rose high in the air and then seemed to boil over toward him. His first shock conviction was that all the firemen on the pier roof had been killed. As debris began crashing down, he ducked under the pumper. Several days later, when a WNYF representative interviewed him, Levitt still found it hard to believe that no firemen had been killed. It's a miracle, he said.
No
Crazy.
Amen.
Crazy.
I would like to see that scene, right? Trying to crawl under there. Seats taken.
No room in the inn.
No, taken.
Go find a manger.
Seats taken.
You can sit next to me.
But you know, I was saying to you guys before the show come on tonight, I was just thinking about this today as I was reviewing everything. This potentially could have been the worst loss of life for the New York City Fire Department prior to 9/11. It's amazing that it wasn't. With the, you know, with, like I say, maybe 60, 75 firefighters already on the scene, and they have an explosion of that caliber, and not one firefighter was killed, is unreal. I can't believe that that they weren't. Thank God. You know, I mean, I'm glad I didn't lose my father. You know, being selfish there, but you know, and I'm glad nobody else did. It's bad enough that 10 civilians were killed and so many people were injured. But holy cow, man, that didn't kill most of the guys on the scene is amazing.
This was a paragraph. Not to cut you off, Pete. Quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
A paragraph in the on Marine One's website, and this one I liked. So basically, it says the miracle of holding such a huge body of fire was helped along by the courage and fast work of all concerned and the fine construction of the pier itself. When the blast occurred and huge chunks of debris tumbled out of the sky, the reaction of almost everyone on the scene was automatic. They ran or ducked for cover. But seconds later, everyone was on their feet, running back to the pier to save those who might be still alive. Hampered by dense smoke and terrific heat, and certain that there was more explosive cargo and on the heavily stocked pier, they nevertheless hurried along with the job of stretching and manning lines. Coast Guardmen and tugboat crews, police and clergymen were right in there needed, putting out adjacent fires, towing ships out of danger, and ministering to the injured. Many heroic acts were performed in rescuing and caring of the victims of the blast. The work of Miss Pauline Tornello, a registered nurse, a fire buff of long standing, was particularly outstanding. She had responded on the second alarm and was in front of the pier when it exploded. As the severely injured were carried off the pier, her white nurse's uniform served as the beacon to which the bearers converged. She applied first aid and collaborated with the members of Rescue 2 in handling the wounded. Her cool efficiency and bearing under most trying conditions won the admiration of all. So
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's some real deal shit right there, no doubt about
Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't have
I mean, that's our job though, then and now, still. You know, when there's a tragedy, when there's disaster, when something terrible happens, the guys are still going to run toward it. You know, if there was, God forbid, there was another 9/11, the guys that are on the job today are going there, and they're going to do it because that's what firefighters are all about. You know.
I mean, look at the guys who pick up the hose lines there after the explosion, not knowing could it explode again. Why not? Sure.
Right.
Sure. What else is in there? They didn't know that was in there. So
they didn't know that was going to explode. So how do they know there wasn't going to be a secondary explosion? But
absolutely,
they went and did the job.
Just to provide some context for everyone who's looking, the pier that I'm showing here now is completely flattened. I mean, you had this one-story building on here prior, and now there's a gaping hole where the blast took place, and every single piece of building almost, except maybe towards Marginal Street there, is where it starts to come back up. It's flattened. It's a flat pier, almost like a dock at that point.
Yeah. You want to know why they ran towards it, bro?
Well,
that's what men do.
That's what men do.
You had the nurse in there too. That's what you got to have some balls.
Men, women, and men. That's what we do.
When Goyles were Goyles and men were men.
Goyles, absolutely.
You know it, Archie Bunker. Yeah, man.
Unbelievable, man.
There was a couple. Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you about, Garrett?
Yes,
I
sir.
researched on a couple of different other. Did you hear anything about? Let me find it here. I thought it was interesting, but that when they were trying to figure out how this fire started, that they received an anonymous call saying that a male voice called the New York Times and pronounced 2 hours before this happened, something big was going to happen on the Brooklyn Pier during this afternoon.
I did not see that. Wow.
Wow. I mean, that can't be coincidence.
Yeah, man. So they had a couple of different. Yeah, you know what's fun? The fire marshal Scott. They talked about also it could have possibly been there was labor. What do you call it's going on at the dock too?
The union. If you know what I mean. Huh?
Yeah, they're having labor disputes
That I
on the
did
dock.
read.
So they
The part
sent one.
that accused that maybe it was union related. I read, but the thing with the phone call, that's pretty eerie.
Yeah, but the guy who was investigating it ruled it coincidental. I'm like, coincidental? We called 2 hours before.
Different times.
It was on coincidence. Maybe it'd be coincidental if you, if maybe it's a little coincidental.
Different times.
Here's a couple tickets to Aruba. Take care of that. Right? Yeah, it was coincidental.
If you're capable of blowing up half the freaking city, I think I would be saying it was coincidental as well. You know,
Fire Marshal Martin Scott said that the call to the Times may have been a total coincidence with the fire. Yeah, okay. Hey, close.
Maybe.
Whoopsie.
I can't imagine. But
so that was that there.
There's definitely some strange stuff involved there.
Yeah, no doubt. So we said there was 10 total deaths and at least 400 people were injured. They actually initially thought 275, but they had a number of closer to 400. And they're saying that the flames in the fire went 3,000 feet in the air. A mushroom cloud of black smoke and fire soaring 3,000 feet in the air. So that was a pretty big boom.
They also had here that heavy traffic in the area delayed additional units, perhaps saving, their lives too, because they weren't able to get there. That's we were saying the fourth and fifth alarms weren't there yet. So,
and actually, if you think about it, Louis, the fourth and fifth alarm companies wouldn't have been able to position their rigs as close to the incident. So if they were arriving and they were setting up, leaving their rigs a couple of blocks away, they might have been right in the area where the debris was going to come down.
Further was worse. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's true. It's a good point.
Would not be good.
Yeah. But, that was interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Garrett, because I'm always interested in these old school fires that, seem to get lost, and we could always learn a little bit, talking about them, though, for sure.
Tell you look through some of the old WMYFs, so many things that went on back then. You wonder how they were able to get the situations under control. They didn't have anywhere near the equipment we have now. It was really done with sheer strength. These guys. I mean, it was really bulwark. I mean, we did bulwark on a job. But these guys, they didn't have tower ladders. They didn't have bunker gear. Well, bunker gear was a hindrance, really. But, I mean, they didn't have SCBA.
Right.
Just amazing that they used to do what they did with what they had, wooden aerials. Just
So hey, Pete, pull up that comment again from Chief Kleehouse about did you see that, Roofy?
Yeah.
That Chief Kleehouse said that
way back. It's way back.
One of Chief Patton's aide was a lieutenant on the FDNY. Can you imagine having that guy as lieutenant? You talk about
it would be almost as scary as having Roofy Refrano.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Almost.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
It was an aide. I think he said he worked in. It's way back in there somewhere. But that's just the caliber of the guys. Like you were talking about your father too, right? Was working under Pat. I mean, these guys were. We said this in a couple episodes back. This is like like they say, the greatest generation ever. No shit, man. Like those were tough guys. Even when you see them in the old school pictures, they just look tough, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here you go. It had to be an Italian. Former FDNY Lieutenant Leo Fracassi, Patton's aide in World War II.
But
Of course.
you want to know something? I have to say this because when I got on, there was a few guys that had that were Vietnam vets, and they always seemed to be the guy. You know what I mean? They always seemed the guys that I gravitated to. You know, they were down to earth. They were always calm in the fire. They were hands-on men, manly men, and I think it was probably the same scenario. You know what I mean? Just different wars. You know, just if you come through that bullshit, that
38.
you're going to be a tough son of a bitch. You know, that's
38 truck. Yeah. So could you imagine if you see what they saw, right? What's going to flap them at a job, really? I mean,
right.
You compare it to what they've seen in battle.
Garrett, what did you say this was? You said that this was
I don't remember. I saw there was a caption with that picture, and I don't remember exactly what department it was, but that's a searchlight unit from a volunteer department. They called the mutual aid to the scene because this scene ran well into the night, and they needed to light the area. I guess they needed more lighting units than we had.
They came in from 18-mile trip from Inwood, outside the city.
Inwood, okay.
Provided illumination as the fire died down.
Yeah.
100%. And one of the coolest photos here too. This one right here, the water tower truck, adapted for New York City scrapers, stood by at the pier, but was not used since its height was no advantage at a ground level blaze.
It looks like the Tillerman on that thing sitting in a kitchen chair.
Right.
Almost, right? And
Holy
just
cow.
Imagine driving in that rig to a fire. Holy shit, that must have been cool. How great is that thing? Look at that thing. Are you kidding me? That thing is got to be sweet, man.
Manly men.
Manly.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote in the chat.
About it.
Somebody wrote in the chat, if you farted raw, they'd punch you in the mouth. That's not true, right?
Oh, you would have been punched a lot then.
Oh my God, I would have had no teeth left in my mouth.
One of the things I read here, it said 114 truck had just come off the roof, and they were repositioning a ground ladder when the concussion blew the ladder into two pieces while two firemen from 114 were carrying the ladder.
Holy shit.
It says it was a 30-foot ladder. After the blast, one fireman was still carrying the ladder, but there was only 6 rungs attached to it.
Oh, where'd it go?
What the heck happened? Holy crap!
Insane.
I mean, and what was we were saying in the pre-show that people for 35 miles away could hear the explosion or more.
Yeah, 35 miles away, the explosion was heard. That's crazy. 35 miles away. That's a big boom.
Yeah, man. That's halfway out the island already, you know? Good God.
The one of the lieutenants that was blown into the water was rescued by firefighters from 109 and 148 truck who had just come off the roof after the explosion. They rode that roof in the explosion. They slid down the beams of the ladder to get off the roof, and then heard that the call for man overboard. So without missing a beat, they ran to where they were saying this lieutenant was, and they used a dry 2.5-inch line to pull him out of the water. That might be the same lieutenant that the firefighter from Rescue 2 jumped into the water to assist. But they ended up pulling him out using fire hose. You think about it again, like you said a little while ago, that these guys were able to react and think on their feet like that. These guys just were on top of a building that detonated with a massive bomb in it, and as soon as they hit the deck, they started running to rescue somebody.
Man.
It's crazy.
Want to know why?
No, we know why.
That's what men do.
I think we know.
Yeah, we know.
Well, men also apparently didn't talk about going to war either, because my wife's grandfather was in World War II, third wave on Omaha Beach, and never said a word about it until he found out I was a war buff and decided to chat with me for a few hours. It's like,
wow, that'd be interesting.
Oh, I have it all on video. It was incredible.
Really?
Man. Oh my God, man! What a story! He got sniped and then he was in a field hospital for 6 months. So
Sitting ducks, man.
yeah,
One of those, one of the paragraphs, one of the last ones that I figured we would, come close to ending with, was the chief of department, Edward Connors, was responding to the fire on 35th Street and was a half a block away when his car got lifted off the ground. We said that. The chief used the radio to alert oncoming companies to these fires, as well as to inform them of what the position to take at the pier. The chief said afterwards, in my 39 years in the department, I have seen miracles, but nothing so miraculous as the fact that not one fireman on the piers were killed.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
So that's, that
they mention one of the articles I read mentions that there is still evidence today in Industry City of damage from the blast.
Great, I love that.
They say iron on some of the fire escapes are mangled of some buildings in the area, and there's windows that have shrapnel embedded in them. That's cool, man. Still there. I couldn't find it. I saw that probably about a year ago. I was doing a little research, and it wasn't a fire service publication. It was like some community history buff or something that wrote about the fire and had some photos of this damage that's still there all these years later.
I would believe it. You would probably see like pitting and old brick or something like that. If you knew what you were looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, that's
kind of interesting.
Yeah, no doubt, man. That's some good stuff, man.
That's a job for, right? Chief.
There you go. That might be a good road trip.
Yeah, man.
Check that out.
So I know, Garrett, I don't know where you got your stuff from, but I wanted to thank most of the stuff that we got was an old WNYF. We don't know who the author was. We tried to look it up. This was the year following this blast, right? 1957. But this WNYF was on the Marine One FDNY website. It's called Miracle on 35th Street. So if anybody wants to look it up,
I'll put it in the chat right now.
And we, just want to give credit to those guys for posting that up because there was a lot of information that we got from there too.
Yeah, and it's in the chat for anyone who's watching. You could find this in the chat archive later on when you click on this video. Or if
it does mention in the article that WNYF intended somewhere further down the line to do an in-depth analysis of the fire, trying to figure out what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and the whole bit. I don't think it ever happened. I don't think they ever wrote it because I've never seen it, and I have pretty much all the WNYFs from back then. But maybe I missed it, but I never found that article.
That's because the guy was in Aruba.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I'm gonna make another article up, but hey, Tony, here's a couple of more tickets, and we'll see you over there.
I was thinking about it when I was on your program the last time. I mentioned at the end, not to take anything for granted and always be ready. When a run comes in, don't assume nothing, whatever. This came in as a fire on a pier. Companies back then probably went to lots of fires on piers, and I'm sure a lot of them were just incipient rubbish fires, things like that, car fire or a piece of machinery burning, something like that. It might sound far-fetched, but no one anywhere in this country or in the world that's in the fire service can ever just assume that the next run's going to be a false alarm or food on a stove or a heart attack. You got no idea. You really have no idea. The next run could be your last run. It could be the biggest fire you're ever going to go to. And that's reality.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And especially if you're complacent, if
you don't even have to be complacent. The scary thing about this job is that you could be doing everything right. Everything right. It don't even matter. Something goes sideways.
Absolutely.
We say that a lot.
We've lost some of our greatest firefighters that ever put on turnout gear. We've lost, in the line of duty, and it wasn't because they didn't know what they were doing. Right. Things go wrong, and a lot of times it's things like this. Nobody knew that these explosives were on that pier.
Yeah.
So you didn't even know you were going into a situation like that, you know. And that's the case a lot of times when we lose guys is you know, illegal renovations and that are hidden and that nobody knows are there, and it's just waiting for the right moment with you know, for the fire to be in the right spot to affect that area, and then for, you know, for one or more of the brothers to just be in the wrong place.
Yeah,
Not the wrong place, like as if they shouldn't have gone there, but it was
Right,
the
right,
wrong
right. No,
place
I got what you're
because of
saying.
that hidden danger, you know.
Yeah.
One
Well,
thing
the
that
only-
boggles my mind about this whole thing, guys, you know, we always talk about Mr. Murphy being in the room, right? Like he's
Yeah.
always waiting to do something to you. But well, who's the opposite of Mr. Murphy? Like Mrs. Murphy? I don't like who's, because this is the one where like all the luck came together in one job.
Right. It's the opposite.
You know what
of-
I mean?
Right. If I always say Murphy's going to show, he's always looking to fall onto somebody. So if you're complacent and you're not doing the right thing, you know, he could land on you. But the opposite would be that you are on top of your game, and like Garrett said, bad shit can happen, and you know, that's what
Murphy showed up for the poor 10 bastards who lost their lives. Some of them got decapitated, you know.
Yeah.
Murphy
Yeah,
showed up
yeah,
on the
yeah,
wrong
for
side
sure.
of the door for them, that's for sure.
I meant more so like for the brothers, you know, like you guys like you go out there, like you all have your 9/11 stories, right? And everyone we've talked about, like, you know, if so and so didn't pull you, and like Kev, you always tell that one where you told somebody to wait, you got to wait for something, and then the truck didn't go, and you pretty much saved somebody's life, right? Like how crazy is that, you know?
Oh,
like,
that was on 9/11. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean. You know what I mean? So like, it's just like you should have zigged when you should have zagged, and it somehow saved your life. What an incredible thing. It really is.
But you know, again, it's well known on our job, and when I say our job, I just mean the fire service in general, because I know many of the people that watch your podcasts are not on FDNY; they're on career and volunteer departments all over the world. You can never ever stop training until you retire. You just can't. There's new things that come up. There's things that slip your mind over the years. And I know you guys talked about it on one of your recent podcasts. You talked about drills that you used to do right in the firehouse a lot of times, you know, quick and dirty drills, different things. It's really important. I mean, you know, the basic stuff, just to be super comfortable with your equipment, like, you know, like they do with the Rock. They beat the SCBA into your brain where you could do it blindfolded, you know, with no problem, because you've just repetition. But just basic stuff, you know, search, how to get a fireman out if a fireman goes down, you know, and you're in a bad spot, you know, quick ways to get him out a window and get him down to the ground. All these things, we need to keep our hands on them, and we need to keep them foremost in our mind, because it might only happen once in your whole career where something goes wrong and you're in the right spot. You got to be able to react right away and take care of it, you know, or you're going to lose a guy.
got to execute.
Yeah.
Right, like this job was almost 100% reactive, right, guys? I mean, like, you know, their shit's blowing up on the spot right there. It's just explosive. And then what do? You're like your dad who ran to try to get under a pumper or whatever it was, right? Like, so you know, they're all moving pieces, and I guess you always default to your level of training, I suppose.
No, it's exactly right.
You know, initially it's survival, because you can't help anybody if you don't survive. So you, in this case, you try to avoid the rain of debris, and as soon as you think it's okay to get back out from there, you know, like you said earlier, everybody went right back to work and started pulling guys out of the water, pushing lines in, starting to hit fire, and that's how you have to operate. And that's
Run
not.
like hell.
It's easier said than done, you know. It's
It's like Rudolph, run like hell, right? What was he?
Run Rudolph.
Fumbles bounce, you know, like as soon as he shows up, run like hell. But
absolutely.
all right, Garrett, nice job, fella.
Nice work,
Thanks,
boys.
Garrett.
Thank you. I
Lot of
enjoyed it.
fun
You know,
with
I enjoy this podcast very much. I mean, I've been watching it from the first time I found out about it, and that I've gotten a chance now to contribute in some way a little bit a couple of times. You know, it's an honor. I enjoy it. I know it gets out to a lot of brothers and sisters out there, and I think everything that gets shared on here is vital. You've had a bunch of amazing guys have come on here with a lot of experience, and they're I really enjoy listening to them, and that you guys give me the chance to share a little bit of what I've seen over the years is it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. And speaking of outstanding guests, Ruffy, should we tell them who we got for Thursday night?
You could spill the beans, brother.
Tell
Spill it.
them. Spill the beans. Me and Ruffy have talked about this often as one of the guys we respect the most, basically, and feared the most as well, right? I mean,
Definitely.
yeah. We got Captain Dennis Murphy from 111, rescued 2, 113, 176 truck. He was the original captain of Squad 288. We're going to talk to him about how they formed the squads, how they picked their guys, how they put these 7 new units together. Should be a great, interesting conversation.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no doubt.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's what I got, Ruffy. What do you got before we got PDP?
I got one shout out. I want to congratulate and welcome to the dock side. Retired. Donnie Schneider, Squad 252, Captain, FDNY. He just retired. His last tour was the other day, 37 years. So I just want to congratulate
him. Donnie. If I was drinking Donnie, this would be to you. There you go.
Nice run.
37
years. That's pretty good.
Captain 103 when I was there for a short time. He looks like a little bit of a wrinkly raisin now, but maybe we'll get him on the show. And
watch that.
I know he's a good friend of mine.
He's not the only wrinkly guy.
Also had a little bit in the past, so maybe we'll see how that works out. But that's it.
Cool.
All right, Pete, you got it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever fine audio podcasts can be found, also don't forget to tune in to youtube.com/Getting Salty Experience every Monday and Thursday for new shows like these. And don't forget to click the like, subscribe, and share button. Take your little digit and hit that button. Because why? Because it helps us out. It's really important. Spreading the word gets us out there more and gets us able to do a lot more fun stuff. You guys can also find us on Instagram.com, of course, at Salty Dog Inc., where Mr. Refrano over there is curating some of the best fire photos in the biz, period. And you get all your last-minute info for every show that we do. Last but not least, guys, head on over to gettingsaltyapparel.com if you'd like to buy T-shirts, hats, anything like that. All of our sales basically help grow the show as well. And if you want to support us, get on over to gettingsaltyapparel.com. Guys, we still are looking for more entries, although we are kind of narrowing things down for the road show. But please shoot those entries over to gettingsaltyexperience@gmail.com. We are getting very close to picking our very first roadshow entry. We're super excited. Questions and answers also go there. And if you want to hit me up personally for any reason, if I can look at it, I'm so busy. Over at gettingsaltypete@gmail.com. No, I have seen a lot of your guys' emails, and thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you hitting me up. And guys, that would be all.
Beautiful.
All right.
Beautiful. All right, fellas. So I know it this time, Pete. Until we see you next time. Stay low and go.
All right, boys. We'll see you at the big one. Good seeing you, Garrett.
Good seeing you. Thank you. Good night.
Later, guys.